April 12, 1944. Outside Łódź, Poland. The radio operator's hands are shaking. Corporal Stefan Kowalski sits hunched over his transmitter in a cramped cellar that smells of damp earth and old potatoes. Above him, the floorboards creak as German boots move through what used to be someone's farmhouse. He's been here for 3 days, part of a Polish resistance cell coordinating with Soviet advance units pushing west through the collapsing German lines. The message crackling through his headset is urgent. A Soviet liaison officer, speaking broken German, is trying to relay orders from Marshal Rokossovski's headquarters to a regiment of Polish Home Army fighters positioned 15 kilometers north. The plan is simple on paper. The Poles are supposed to hold their position along the Bzura River while Soviet armor moves up to reinforce them. Then, together, they'll push toward the city.
But the Soviet officer's German is rough. He's reading from a hastily translated document, and his accent turns certain words into mush. Kowalski scribbles as fast as he can, his pencil scratching across a water-stained notebook. Einheiten müssen zurückziehen sofort. Kowalski stops writing. He reads it back to himself. Units must withdraw immediately.
That can't be right. He asks for clarification, but the Soviet officer is already moving on, rattling off coordinates and timing. The connection is bad. Static swallows half the words. Kowalski catches fragments. Dawn, artillery support, coordinate with, and then nothing. The line goes dead. He stares at his notes. The order says, withdraw. But withdrawing now would leave a gap in the line wide enough for an entire German panzer battalion to slip through. The Poles have been holding that river crossing for 2 weeks, taking casualties every day because it's the only route the Soviets can use to bring up their heavy armor without getting bogged down in the marshlands to the east. If they pull back, the Germans will blow the bridge. The offensive stalls, maybe for days, maybe longer. Kowalski's commander, Lieutenant Jerzy Adamczyk, is upstairs. He's 31 years old, looks 50, and hasn't slept more than 3 hours a night since the Germans invaded 5 years ago. Kowalski climbs the narrow stairs and finds him in the kitchen, studying a map by candlelight. "We have orders from Rokossovski's staff," he says. He hands over the notebook. Adamczyk reads it. His face doesn't change, but his jaw tightens. Withdraw? That's what came through. When? Immediately. Before dawn. Adamczyk looks at the map. The river position is marked with a red circle. Blue arrows show where Soviet tank columns are supposed to link up with them at first light. If the Poles aren't there, those tanks roll straight into a German kill zone. This doesn't make sense, Adamczyk says. We're supposed to be the anchor. If we pull back, what holds the line? Kowalski doesn't answer. He doesn't need to. They both know what happens when orders don't make sense. You follow them anyway because the alternative is chaos. But Adamczyk is staring at that red circle on the map, and Kowalski can see him working through the logic. The Soviets wouldn't pull us back without a reason. Maybe they know something, maybe German reinforcements are coming, maybe the whole operation is being scrapped. Or maybe someone made a mistake. "Did you confirm this?" Adamczyk asks. The line cut out. I tried to reconnect. Nothing. Adamczyk folds the map and tucks it inside his coat. He looks at the squad leaders. "Get the men ready to move. We pull out in 1 hour." Kowalski hesitates. "And the bridge?" "We leave it. If the Soviets want us gone, they must have a plan." But as Kowalski heads back downstairs, he can't shake the feeling that something is wrong. He sits at his radio and tries again to raise the Soviet liaison. Static. He switches frequencies, tries the backup channel. More static. And then, through the noise, he hears something. A voice. Faint. Distant. Speaking in Russian. It's not the same officer. This one sounds calmer, more deliberate. Kowalski's Russian is limited, but he catches a few words. Hold position. Reinforcements. Dawn. His stomach drops. He sprints back upstairs. Adamczyk is already outside briefing his squad leaders. Kowalski grabs his arm. "Wait! I got another transmission, Russian this time. It says, hold position. Adamczyk stares at him. You're sure? I'm sure. But the German message was wrong. It has to be. The word wasn't zurückziehen, it was verrücken, not withdraw, advance. Adamczyk freezes. The squad leaders are watching him, waiting. Behind them, 32 men are checking weapons, rolling up bedrolls, preparing to abandon a position they've bled to hold. You're telling me you mistranslated the order? Adamczyk's voice is quiet, but there's an edge to it that makes Kowalski's throat tighten. The connection was bad. His accent, the Soviet officer, he was reading German phonetically. The Z sound and the vor sound, they came through almost identical with all that static. I thought I heard zurückziehen, withdraw, but it must have been vorrücken, advance. Adamczyk looks at him for a long moment. Must have been? The second transmission confirms it. Hold position, wait for reinforcements. That only makes sense if we're supposed to advance after the tanks arrive, not pull back. One of the squad leaders, a man named Wojtek with a scar running from his eye to his jaw, spits into the dirt. So we're trusting a maybe? We pull out now, we're alive tomorrow. We stay, and if you're wrong, we're sitting here when the Germans figure out nobody's coming to back us up. Kowalski doesn't have an answer for that, because Wojtek is right. If he's wrong, if the order really was to withdraw, then staying puts everyone in this unit at risk. The Germans have been probing their position for days. They know the poles are undermanned. One serious push, and the line breaks. But if he's right, and we withdraw, the Soviets lose their avenue of advance. The Germans hold the bridge. The offensive stalls. And the 3,000 men in the Soviet tank columns rolling toward this position at dawn drive straight into prepared German defenses without the covering fire they're expecting from the Polish position. Adamczyk is still looking at the map. How confident are you? Kowalski swallows. 70%? Maybe 80. 70%. Adamczyk folds the map and tucks it inside his coat. He looks at the squad leaders. Stand down. We're staying. Wojtek shakes his head. You're gambling all our lives on 70%? No, Adamczyk says. I'm gambling our lives on what makes tactical sense. If Rokossovsky wanted us gone, he'd have sent a runner or used the backup frequency to confirm. The fact that we got a fragmentary transmission in bad German, followed by a clearer one in Russian, tells me the first message was garbled. We stay. The squad leaders disperse, grumbling but obedient. Kowalski expects Adamczyk to say something more, maybe dress him down for the mistake, but the lieutenant just claps him on the shoulder. Get back on that radio. If you can raise anyone, Soviet, Polish, I don't care, you confirm our position and our orders. Understood? Yes, sir. Kowalski returns to his cellar and spends the next 2 hours cycling through every frequency he knows. He gets nothing but static, and once, a burst of German traffic that makes his blood run cold, because that means enemy radio operators are close. He logs it, marks the approximate direction based on signal strength, and keeps trying. At 4 a.m, his eyes are burning and his hand is cramping from adjusting dials. He's about to give up when a voice breaks through, clear as a church bell. This is Captain Volkov, 3rd Guards Tank Army. Identify. Kowalski nearly drops the headset. He fumbles for his codebook and rattles off the proper response. There's a pause, then Volkov comes back. You're the Zura River position. Yes, sir. Confirming our orders, we received conflicting transmissions earlier. Are we to hold or withdraw? Another pause. Longer this time. I can hear voices in the background, Russian, arguing about something. Finally, Volkov returns. Hold your position. Repeat, hold your position. Armor will reach you at 0530 hours. You will provide covering fire for our crossing and then advance with us toward the city. Who told you to withdraw? There was a transmission, German language, from one of your liaison officers. The wording was unclear. German? Volkov sounds confused. Our liaison section uses Russian or Polish. Who was the officer? Kowalski doesn't have a name. He says as much. There's a long silence on the other end, and when Volkov speaks again, his tone has changed. That was Lieutenant Kuznetsov. He's from Siberia. His German is terrible. He shouldn't have been on that frequency at all. He was supposed to relay the message in Russian to our translator, who would then contact you in Polish. But we had a communication breakdown on our end, and he trying to do it himself. So the order was,
Vorrücken bei Tagesanbruch, advance at dawn. But I'm guessing his pronunciation made it sound like zurückziehen. If you'd pulled back, our tanks would have driven into a trap. The Germans have an 88mm anti-tank gun position overlooking that bridge. Your covering fire is the only thing keeping it suppressed. Kowalski's mouth goes dry. How many tanks are in your column? 47 T-34s, plus infantry support. If that 88 had a clear field of fire, we'd lose a third of them in the first 2 minutes. Which means if Kowalski hadn't caught the mistake, if he hadn't questioned the order, if Adamczyk hadn't trusted his instinct and decided to stay, somewhere between 15 and 20 Soviet tanks would have burned at that bridge crossing. And with them, the crews. 5 men per tank. That's 75 to 100 lives. Probably more counting the infantry. All because of one word. One mispronounced syllable in a language the speaker barely understood. Kowalski climbs the stairs one more time. The sky outside the farmhouse windows is turning gray, that thin pre-dawn light that makes everything look washed out and unreal. Adamczyk is at the window, watching the tree line across the river through a pair of battered binoculars. They're coming. Kowalski says, 5:30, 47 tanks. Adamczyk lowers the binoculars. You confirm the order? Directly with their tank commander. We hold. We cover their crossing, then we advance with them. Kowalski pauses. He also said if we'd pulled back, they'd have driven into an 88 position. We would have gotten a lot of them killed. Adamczyk doesn't respond immediately. He hands the binoculars to Kowalski and points toward a low rise on the far side of the river, maybe 800 meters out. That's where it is, the 88. We've been trading shots with it for 3 days. They move it at night, but it's always somewhere on that ridge. German crew knows what they're doing. They've been waiting for something worth shooting at. Kowalski looks through the binoculars. He can't see the gun itself, but he can see the ridge, the scraggly pines that provide cover, the dark mouth of what might be a camouflage position. Somewhere in there, a German gun crew is probably drinking ersatz coffee and waiting for the sun to come up. How do we keep it suppressed? Asks Kowalski. We don't. We keep them nervous. Every time they try to set up for a clean shot, we put rifle fire on their position, make them duck, make them second guess. It won't stop them, but it'll slow them down, buy the tanks time to get across. It's not much of a plan. Rifle fire against an 88 is like throwing rocks at a tiger, but it's all they have. Adamczyk checks his watch. 20 minutes. Get everyone in position. Remind them, disciplined fire only. We're not trying to kill that gun crew. We're trying to make their job harder. Kowalski passes the word. The men spread out along the riverbank, taking cover behind rocks, fallen trees, the remnants of a stone wall that probably marked some farmer's property line before the war erased borders that mattered. They're quiet, professional. These aren't the eager volunteers from 1939. These are men who've survived 5 years of occupation, who've learned that survival means keeping your head down and your mouth shut until the moment you absolutely need to act. The river is narrow here, maybe 40 meters across, shallow enough that the tanks can ford it if the approach is clear. The bridge itself is a rickety wooden affair that might hold 1 tank at a time if God is feeling generous. The Poles aren't here to defend the bridge. They're here to make sure the Germans can't turn the crossing into a killing ground. Kowalski finds his spot behind a thick oak tree and checks his rifle. It's a Mosin Nagnond captured from a Soviet supply dump 2 years ago. The bolt is sticky and the sights are off by at least 2 degrees, but it fires, and that's what matters. He's got 40 rounds in a canvas pouch at his hip. If he's lucky, he won't need to use half of them. The light is getting stronger now. I can hear birds starting to wake up in the trees behind me, their songs jarringly normal against the weight of what's about to happen. Somewhere in the distance, an engine rumbles, then another. The sound grows, a low mechanical thunder that seems to come from everywhere and nowhere. Adamczyk's voice carries across the position, calm and steady. Here they come. The first tank breaks through the tree line to the east at exactly 5:30. It's a T-34, squat and brutal, its long guns swinging slowly as the commander scans for threats. Then another appears, and another.
They come in a loose column spread out enough that one shell won't take out two tanks, but close enough to provide mutual support. Kowalski watches them approach the river. The lead tank slows, its commander visible in the turret hatch, and for a moment, everything is still. Then the tank lurches forward, nose dipping as it enters the water. The engine roars. Water sprays up around the treads. The tank pushes through, finds purchase on the far bank, and climbs out. That's when the Germans open fire. The 88 barks once, a flat crack that echoes across the valley. The shell screams past the lead tank, close enough that Kowalski sees the commander flinch and slams into the riverbank behind it. Dirt and rocks fountain up. The tank accelerates, trying to get clear of the crossing, but it's slow, and the next shot won't miss. "Fire!" Adamczyk shouts. 30 Polish rifles open up at once. The rounds snap across the river and hammer into the ridge where the German gun is hidden. Kowalski can't see if they're hitting anything, but he sees movement, a flash of field gray as someone ducks behind cover. He fires again, works the bolt, fires. The Mosin kicks against his shoulder, the report loud enough to make his ears ring. The second tank is in the water now. The 88 swings toward it, but the rifle fire must be doing something because the shot comes late, rushed. It hits the water 10 meters short, throwing up a geyser that drenches the tank but does no damage. The T-34 keeps coming. More tanks enter the river. The Germans are trying to adjust, trying to find a rhythm, but every time they set up for a shot, the Polish fire intensifies. Kowalski empties his rifle, reloads, empties it again. His hands are shaking from adrenaline and his shoulder is going to be one massive bruise tomorrow, but he keeps firing because that's the job. Make them nervous, make them slow. The lead tank is across now, its gun traversing to engage the German position. It fires, and the shell hits somewhere up on the ridge. Kowalski sees trees shaking from the impact. The 88 goes quiet. More tanks cross. 5, 10, 15. They spread out on the far side, forming a line, their guns all pointed at that ridge. The German crew knows they're done. One gun against 15 tanks is suicide. Kowalski sees figures moving in the trees, pulling back, abandoning the position. By 6 o'clock, all 47 tanks are across. The German gun is silent, and Adamczyk is standing next to Kowalski, watching Soviet infantry dismount from their vehicles and begin moving toward the city.
"You saved them," Adamczyk says quietly. "You know that, right? If we'd pulled back, this would have been a slaughter." Kowalski doesn't feel like a hero. He feels exhausted and shaky and slightly sick. "I almost got it wrong." "But you didn't. You questioned it. You checked. That's the difference." The Soviet infantry captain who finds them an hour later doesn't look impressed. His name is Petrov, and he's young, maybe 25, with a face that suggests he's seen more in the last 3 years than most people see in a lifetime. He's got a map case under one arm and a pistol on his hip, and he speaks Polish with a Moscow accent that makes some of the words sound clipped and foreign. "You're Lieutenant Adamczyk?" Adamczyk nods. "That's me." Captain Volkov sends his compliments. "He says you held the position when you had orders to withdraw." "We had confusing orders," Adamczyk says carefully. "We stayed because withdrawal didn't make tactical sense." Petrov studies him for a moment, then looks at Kowalski. "You're the radio operator." "Corporal Kowalski, yes." "Volkov wants to see you, both of you. He's at the forward command post 2 kilometers west." Petrov gestures toward a motorcycle with a sidecar parked near the road. "I'll take you." The ride is short and jarring, the motorcycle bouncing over ruts and debris. They pass Soviet infantry digging in along the road, setting up machine gun positions, stringing telephone wire between hastily erected poles. The offensive is moving fast now, the momentum building, and everyone knows that when you have the Germans on their heels, you don't let up. The command post is a commandeered barn that still smells like hay and livestock. Inside, a dozen Soviet officers crowd around a table covered in maps. Volkov is easy to spot because he's the one with tank goggles pushed up on his forehead and oil stains on his uniform. He looks up when Adamczyk and Kowalski enter, and his face breaks into something that might be a smile under different circumstances. He says, "The Poles who saved my tanks." He waves them over. "Come, look at this." The map shows the region around Łódź. Red arrows indicate Soviet advances, blue marks show German positions. There are a lot more blue marks than Kowalski would like to see. Volkov taps the map at the Bzora River crossing. "This is where we would have died. The Germans had 2 companies of infantry in support of that 88. If you'd withdrawn, if we'd come across that river without covering fire,
They would have destroyed at least a dozen tanks in the first minute, maybe more. The rest of my column would have been trapped on the far bank, unable to advance, unable to retreat, sitting targets. He looks at Kowalski directly. Volkov tells me that you are the one who caught the error, the mistranslation. I almost didn't. I wrote down Zurückziehen, withdraw. I was about to execute that order. But you questioned it. The second transmission came through, in Russian. It contradicted the first one. That's when I realized the German word must have been wrong. He exchanges a look with another officer, an older man with colonel's insignia who's been listening quietly. The colonel speaks for the first time, his voice rough like he smoked too many cigarettes. Do you know what happened to Lieutenant Kuznetsov, the man who sent that first transmission? Kowalski shakes his head. He's been reassigned to a supply depot in Minsk, far away from any radio equipment. The colonel's expression doesn't change, but there's something hard in his eyes. His mistake nearly cost us a battalion of armor. And the Red Army, we don't tolerate that kind of incompetence. There's a silence. Kowalski thinks about Kuznetsov, some young officer from Siberia who probably joined the army thinking he'd serve his country, who got put in a job he wasn't trained for because someone needed a German speaker and his file said he'd studied it in school. One bad transmission, one mispronounced word, and now he's shuffling crates in a warehouse hundreds of kilometers from the front. It wasn't entirely his fault, Kowalski says quietly. The static was bad. His accent was thick. Anyone could have made that mistake. The colonel looks at him. Anyone could have, but not everyone would have caught it. That's the point, Corporal. War is built on 1,000 small decisions, most of them made by tired men with incomplete information. The difference between victory and defeat is often just one person who stops and thinks instead of blindly following orders. Adamczyk speaks up. With respect, sir, we were lucky. If that second transmission hadn't come through, we'd withdrawn. We'd never known. But it did come through, and you acted on it. That's not luck, that's judgment. He reaches into his coat and pulls out 2 small boxes. Marshal Rakowski has authorized commendations for your unit for holding a critical position under difficult circumstances and enabling the success of the Łódź offensive. He opens the boxes. Inside are medals, Polish military crosses. These are for you and your men. Adamczyk takes them, but he doesn't look happy. How many men did we save exactly? Volkov glances at the colonel, who nods. Estimated casualty projection if the crossing had been unopposed from your position, 230 dead or wounded, 12 to 15 tanks destroyed. The offensive would have stalled for at least 48 hours while we regrouped and found another crossing point. In that time, the Germans would have reinforced Łódź. We might not have taken the city until June.
230. Kowalski tries to picture that many men, that many families getting letters with words like heroically and in service to that don't mean anything when the person you love isn't coming home. He thinks about the tank crews who crossed that river this morning, who are probably pushing toward the city right now, who have no idea how close they came to burning alive in their machines. There's something else you should know, the colonel says. He pulls a document from the pile on the table. We've been investigating communication protocols since this incident. Turns out Kuznetsov wasn't the only liaison officer using German to relay orders to non-Russian units. It was common practice in some sectors because we didn't have enough translators. But German is the enemy's language. Accents vary wildly. The potential for error is enormous. He looks at both of them. As of today, all intra-unit communication will be conducted in Russian or the native language of the receiving unit with qualified translators only. No more improvisation, no more hoping someone's half-remembered school German is good enough. Adamczyk absorbs this. How many other mistakes have there been? We don't know, the colonel admits. That's the problem. We only know about this one because you caught it. How many orders were garbled and never questioned? How many units withdrew when they should have advanced, or advanced when they should have held? How many men died because someone couldn't pronounce a word correctly? He folds the document and tucks it away. We'll never know, but we can make sure it doesn't keep happening. They return to the farmhouse just after noon. The Soviet advance is pushed west, the sound of artillery a constant rumble on the horizon. Adamczyk's unit is still at the river position, but they're relaxed now, smoking cigarettes, cleaning weapons, doing the small maintenance tasks that soldiers do when the immediate danger has passed. Wojtek sees them coming and stands up, grinding his cigarette under his boot. So, what did the Russians want? Adamczyk holds up the metal boxes, commendations, from Rokossovsky himself. There's a moment of silence, then one of the younger men, a kid named Pyotr, who can't be more than 19, lets out a whoop. Others join in, grinning, slapping each other on the back. It's not often that the Home Army gets official recognition from the Soviets.
The relationship between Polish resistance fighters and the Red Army is complicated, layered with distrust and political calculation. A commendation means something. It means they're being seen as allies, not obstacles. But Adamczyk doesn't smile. He distributes the medals quietly, shaking each man's hand, and then he walks to the edge of the position and stares across the river at the ridge where the German 88 had been. Kowalski follows him. "You all right?" Kowalski asks. Thinking about the other times, the orders that didn't get questioned, the messages that got garbled and nobody caught it. "You remember last October, the company that was supposed to reinforce us at Sakachev?" Kowalski remembers. They had been holding a crossroads against a German counterattack, outnumbered 3-1, waiting for reinforcements that never came. 15 men died in that fight. When it was over, when the Germans finally pulled back because they had bigger problems elsewhere, Adamczyk had tried to find out what happened to the reinforcements. The answer was vague. Communication breakdown, missed orders, friendly units moved to a different sector. "You think that was a translation error?" Kowalski asks. "I don't know. Maybe. Or maybe it was just chaos. But now I wonder how many times we blamed chaos when it was really just someone mishearing a word, misreading a message, making a small mistake that got people killed." That's what the colonel was really saying, wasn't it? This isn't an isolated incident. This is a systemic problem. And we only know about this one because you got lucky with that second transmission. Kowalski doesn't have an answer for that. The truth is, he did get lucky. If Captain Volkov hadn't been on the radio at that exact moment, if the signal hadn't broken through the static, if Kowalski had been even slightly less paranoid about the original order, they would have withdrawn. The tanks would have died, and nobody would have ever connected those deaths to one Siberian lieutenant's bad German pronunciation. How many wars are being fought inside this war? How many people are dying not because of bullets or bombs, but because someone used the wrong word in the wrong language at the wrong time? It's not a question Kowalski can answer, but he thinks about it for the rest of the day and into the evening as the Soviet offensive pushes deeper towards Łódź and the sound of fighting grows more distant. He thinks about all the moving parts of a military operation, all the messages passed from headquarters to field units, all the translations and retranslations, all the opportunities for a single syllable to be misheard or mispronounced. Language is supposed to connect people, but in war, it becomes just another weapon that can misfire. That night, Kowalski's back at his radio, monitoring traffic, when he picks up a transmission in Polish. It's a Home Army unit 20 kilometers south requesting clarification on movement orders. They sound confused. The orders they received don't match their tactical situation. He listens as they go back and forth with their command, trying to sort out the confusion, and eventually someone figures out that the original message had been translated from Russian to German to Polish, and somewhere in that chain the word for reconnaissance became withdrawal. Kowalski intervenes. He identifies himself, references the new communication protocols that the Soviets just implemented, and helps sort out the confusion. The unit stays in position, crisis averted. But how many others aren't being averted? How many units right now are following garbled orders because nobody thought to question them? 3 days later, Łódź falls. The Soviet and Polish forces push through the city's outskirts, and by the 18th of April, the German garrison is in full retreat. Adamczyk's unit participates in the final push, fighting house to house through industrial districts that smell like chemicals and smoke. Kowalski stays with the radios, coordinating with Soviet artillery, passing target information, making sure everyone knows where friendly units are so they don't shell their own people. The work is exhausting and unglamorous. Nobody writes songs about radio operators. But Kowalski is starting to understand that this is where wars are actually won or lost, not in grand strategic plans or heroic charges, but in the mundane, critical work of making sure the right information gets to the right people at the right time in a language they can actually understand. On April 20th, the city's secure. The Germans are gone, pushed west toward their collapsing lines, and Soviets are already bringing up supplies, establishing occupation authority, beginning the messy work of transitioning from combat to control. Adamczyk's unit is pulled back for rest and refit. They've been on the line for 3 weeks straight, and they look like it. Kowalski finds a quiet corner in a half-destroyed apartment building and tries to sleep, but his mind won't stop. He keeps thinking about that first transmission, that garbled word, how close they came to disaster. He thinks about Kuznetsov, exiled to his supply depot, and wonders if the man understands what his mistake almost caused. He thinks about the 230 casualties that didn't happen, the families who don't know how close they came to losing someone. And he thinks about all the times it went the other way, all the mistakes that didn't get caught, all the men who died because of mispronounced syllable, a misread message, a translator who wasn't quite good enough for the job they had been given. War is full of those invisible tragedies, the deaths that didn't need to happen, the disasters that were entirely preventable. History remembers the big battles, the famous generals, the turning points, but it forgets the small moments, the individual decisions, the radio operators and translators and junior officers who hold the whole fragile structure together.